Hello and welcome to Focus on the Bible. I am so glad that you are listening. I want to begin by inviting you to our services at Eastside. Meet at 9 o'clock for worship, followed by Bible classes for all ages at 9:30, and then at 10:30 for a second period of worship. In addition, we'll meet at 6 p.m. on Wednesday evenings for Bible study. Love to have you come and visit with us soon. If you would like to watch our live stream for either Sunday or Wednesday, send me an email at focusonthebible@icloud.com. That's focusonthebible@icloud.com. Or give me a call or text at 256-349-8911. That's 256-349-8911. I want to begin in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. In 2 Chronicles chapter 20, beginning in verse 1. 2 Chronicles 20 in verse 1. After this, the Moabites and Ammonites, and with them some of the Mennonites, came against Jehoshaphat for battle. Some men came and told Jehoshaphat, "A great multitude is coming against you from Edom, from beyond the sea. And behold, they are in Hazazon Tamar, that is Engedi." Maybe if you need a little bit of adventure and excitement in your life, you might think about visiting Richardson Farms. Richardson Farms is the home of the world's largest corn maze. They're located just a little north of Chicago, and that maze is actually 4 separate mazes that all work together, 28 acres of corn maze, nearly 9 miles of trails. Now, if you're a little worried about getting lost, the folks at Richardson Farms don't want you to be nervous about that. They assure you that if you need to get out and get a fresh donut or a cup of hot cocoa, for added strength and stamina, of course, and you can find your way out of the maze in minutes. There is a perimeter pass running the entire maze, and there are no dead ends in the maze. Now, I have to say this, I love corn mazes. We didn't get to go to Rainsville to the pumpkin patch this year. We were going to go a couple weeks ago when Joshua was in town, but there was a hurricane and rain and all that going through, so we weren't able to do that. But I do have on my bucket list the maze at Richardson Farms. In fact, that maze that you are looking at right here, this is the map from last year. They did a salute to the Apollo moon landing. But you know what? As much as I love corn mazes, I don't think I need to drive Richardson Farms to feel like I'm in a maze this year. It seems like a lot of life has a lot of twists and turns and uncertainty, and somehow I missed the place where you can jump off and get a donut and hot cocoa. Although I did try that a week before last during the election, turned off the election coverage and watched some Hallmark Christmas movies instead. Doesn't get any sappier than that. That was fun. I needed that. And it seems like this is a time when we're just twisting and turning and we're unsure. Should I go this way? Should I go that way? Can I get my family involved in this? What's going to happen to this country? There doesn't seem to be any light at the end of this maze called 2020. And it's like life has become a maze with no easy outs. One of the things I've been doing this year is collecting memes about 2020. I want this t-shirt, "I survived 2020, and all I got was this lousy shirt." I like that. 2020 only got 1 star, very bad, would not recommend. Waking up every morning in 2020 like, let's see where we are. Oh yes, in the pit of despair. Right, we all can relate to that right now. We don't know what to do. What do you do in times of trouble and turmoil? What do you do when you just don't know what to do? When you're not sure what to do, when you're in a maze and you can't seem to get it to be solved, or you can't find a way to solve it, what do you do? This morning, it seems like a great time for us to spend some time with King Jehoshaphat. In 2 Chronicles 20, we have described for us an incredibly difficult situation in which the small and weak nation of Judah was being attacked by massive armies, huge armies from the major powers of the day. And it wasn't just, what is King Jehoshaphat going to do about this? It wasn't just that. All of his people are looking to him saying, "We need you to lead us out of this maze, O king." You want to talk about some high stakes. Well, can I spoil the tension here? Jehoshaphat does it. Right? Jehoshaphat does lead God's people out of this difficulty. He gets out of the maze. He leads Judah out of the maze. Are you interested in what he did? Do you want to know how he did that? This morning, I want us to visit with King Jehoshaphat so that we can learn what to do when we don't know what to do. I want us to be in the Word of God so that we will get some practical and scriptural counsel that will assist us, not just in living through the current crisis, but that will help us anytime we feel lost and uncertain. Anytime we're saying, you know what, I just don't know what to do. And I'm just going to start that by just kind of bringing you up to date on Jehoshaphat in case you didn't know or haven't been doing some light reading in Chronicles lately. And who is King Jehoshaphat? What's going on with him? You should know that he is actually a very good king. He's a good king. There are some ups and downs, I get that, but by and large, 2 Chronicles 17 tells us he was a good king. His father served the Lord. He served the Lord. Now, he did make the mistake of getting tied up in an alliance with the northern Israel, with the king Ahab. And since Ahab was literally married to Jezebel, that ended very poorly. But 2 Chronicles 19 describes how a chastened Jehoshaphat nearly got killed in battle, how he came home and decided to redouble his efforts in serving God. If you feel like you're in a maze and you don't know what to do, how about 2 Chronicles 20? Because when Jehoshaphat looked out and saw that giant army coming, it wasn't because he was wicked and doing bad things. No, he repented of that. He was serving God now more than ever. Then an army comes to attack Judah. Hey, I'm trying to do what's right here. Now this? What's going on? And maybe as we think about it, it's appropriate to note some things that Jehoshaphat didn't do about this problem. I'm so impressed with how Jehoshaphat didn't get involved in wrong solutions like trying to ignore the trouble. When things are bad, there's always a temptation to go ostrich. I'll just stick my head in the sand and hope that everything goes away. But usually neglect doesn't help situations get better, does it? I have learned this firsthand. Usually when we put off taking care of the problem in front of us, that means we're just going to be forced to deal with the difficulty later when it's worse. In fact, I think a little bit about that, about world history in the 1930s. Europe decided to pretend that Adolf Hitler wasn't really a big problem, not that big a deal. He was actually doing what was best for Germany, and everything will be just fine if we'll just, close our eyes and pretend really, really hard. That approach in the 1930s led to a world war in the 1940s. But that's not just true in international politics. What about parents who neglect to see the truth about their teenager? He's hanging with the wrong crowd. He's getting involved in more trouble. There's attitudes of rebellion that are beginning to manifest and show. But you know what? We'll just hide our eyes and hope that goes away. What about a marriage that's in some rough seas, that it seems like it's in danger of floundering and sinking? But you know what? I don't want to talk about those difficult problems. That's uncomfortable to deal with. We'll just pretend we're all fine. And that's not just in the home. What about churches that divide and wither away because they're not willing to realistically appraise the challenges before them? When I was first beginning to preach the gospel, coming up now this coming February, 20 years. That's hard to believe. 20 years has gone by already. When I first began to preach, I filled in on Sunday evenings a few times, a handful of times for a church that used to be enormously large. I mean, at one time they had 250 plus members, but they had withered away down to about 25. And so by the time that I got there, they had quit using the first 2/3 of the church building. They were only using the back 2 or 3 rows. They had pulled a lectern up there between the first 2 or 3 rows, and that's where they met. All the rest of this back up here was just dark. And they didn't use this part of that building. They had tons and tons of Bible classrooms in the back. They were collecting dust. They weren't getting used, right? I mean, all that was going on. Their building was getting run down. They were on the wrong side of the town. They didn't aggressively look for new property. They didn't want to talk about any of that. We love where we are. We have great, fine gospel preachers come through and preach here, don't you know? It'll all be fine. Today, that congregation is no more. And it's hard to see It's not hard to see that something had gone wrong. All too often, if we're not proactive in the early stages of a crisis, we end up being reactive when things are much more difficult later. I'm impressed that Jehoshaphat doesn't say, hey, let's all just sleep on this and we'll hope they've gone away in the morning. I'm also impressed that Jehoshaphat doesn't try to minimize the problem. You know what? If it won't go away, maybe we can just pretend it really isn't that terrible. We'll just let things rock along here and we'll just say that this isn't such a big deal. Why are you panicking about this? And that's a strategy that a lot of people are going to employ because there are always somebody around who wants to make things worse than they are. That would be the media. And if you're going to throw a party where we were all going to blame the media for our problems, please send me an invitation. I'm all in for that. But there's lots of ways that we can try to minimize besides just blaming the politics of whoever's politics we don't like or the media for inflaming passions. There's other tricks that we could use. How about that wonderful nostalgia trick? You know the one I'm talking about? Oh, you think this is a problem? Well, when I was a kid, let me tell you how bad things were when I was a kid back then. See, there's lots of ways that we can act like this isn't such a big deal. But let me make sure that we're not just thinking on a national or global level. Some of the problems that are dominating the news.com, that's not the problem here. Let me just ask you, what about your marriage? Are you minimizing some of the cracks in the foundation that are appearing? What about stress and anxiety and depression in your life? Are there some health indicators in your life that are waving big red flags? Hey, you need to pay attention to this. And we're saying, it's not that big a deal. I like Jehoshaphat's approach. He doesn't look at that big army and say, well, look at that. I bet those guys are just here to have a picnic. They weren't there for a picnic. And Jehoshaphat faced that realistically. Let me suggest to you thirdly this morning that Jehoshaphat did not engage in ungodliness. He didn't decide, you know what we'll do? We'll sin our way out of this problem. Actually, if you track Jehoshaphat, he had some issues before with being attacked. And the answer to that before was, hey, we got to get a little bit, we got a little bitty army here. We can't take care of this on our own. We got to make a deal with another country that's got a giant army. They'll help us out. And that's why he engaged in an alliance with King Ahab in Israel, and that was wrong. So I like that Jehoshaphat had actually made this mistake before, but he didn't make that mistake twice. But I've known folks who have found themselves in a mess, and they decide, you know what, we'll just dab a little sin on this problem, and everything will be better. My marriage is loveless. The fix, that's obviously an affair. That's obviously where I need to go with this. I've got all kinds of financial problems, but since I'm the bookkeeper at the firm, I think I can steal from my boss. He'll never know about it because I'm the one who can cook the books. And it's just a little bit anyway. Well, what about young people? I don't have a lot of friends. I'm not fitting in. So you know what I'll do? I'll just put my discipleship on the back burner, do some things that everybody else is doing. I can do those things too, even if they're not right, but then I'll be popular. In Proverbs chapter 16, we'll come back to Chronicles, but in Proverbs 16 and verse 5, the wise man says, everyone who is arrogant in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Be assured he will not go unpunished. In chapter 19 and verse 16, almost as if Solomon is reading our mind when we think, I can sin my way out of that difficulty here. He says in verse 16, whoever keeps the commandment keeps his life. He who despises his way will die. Sin is not a workable long-term solution, which means it's also not a good short-term solution. Now you put all that together when we turn back to 2 Chronicles 20, and you're looking at a lot of things that people are trying to do when they're in a tough spot, and none of those things genuinely help them. Please join us next week for the conclusion of this lesson. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day.